Justin, thank you very much. How do the Wisconsin Supreme Court candidates feel about key issues, and why are some Republicans upset about the new Secretary of State? Emily Fannin, J.R. Ross have the answers in this week's Capital Connection.
Jared, let's first start with the state Supreme Court debate, the one and only that the candidates had, where they doled out on a lot of issues. And kind of the overall theme that we saw is the candidates pointed to their opponents' partisan ties when it comes to the issues of abortion, redistricting, crime, and the massive amount of money fueling this race. There was some heated exchanges. You know, the gloves kind of came off a bit because it's the only time that they're going to be able to do this before the April 4th election. Let's first just hear a little bit from both candidates on the issue of abortion and kind of some of those testy exchanges.
I have been very clear about my values to the electorate because I think the electorate deserves to know what a person's values are rather than hiding them. But I can tell you that if my opponent is elected, I can tell you with 100% certainty that 1849 abortion ban will stay on the books.
Once again, so this seems to be a pattern for you, Janet, just telling lies about it.
So, JR, when these debates happen, we always kind of look for those aha moments. Like you always mention what's going to end up in a campaign ad. I don't think we really saw any of those.
No, any more debates has become, you can't win a campaign in a debate, but you can lose one if you have that moment. I think if we were, let's say, judging a high school debate competition, people would probably go that Dan Kelly won. He was a little more polished, a little more aggressive. If you watched it, though, he also referred to Protasiewicz as Janet quite often. If you are an undecided female voter in the suburbs who happens to be a key this election with abortion, does that turn you off? Protasiewicz at times a little bit unsteady in her answers, or fumble a couple of things. Does that make you feel like she's not ready, or does it make her more relatable as a person? But those voters aren't watching this. You and I are watching or participating, right. But most people aren't watching this debate. It's the coverage of it. Is it go viral in a campaign ad or in a digital spot that you see on YouTube as you're flipping through your videos in the weekend? I didn't sense there was that kind of a moment in the debate that's really going to change the trajectory of what we're seeing right now, especially with so many impressions on TV through the ad campaigns. That's what people are seeing more than this debate.
And some of the things that were noteworthy that came out of it that I caught was Dan Kelly finally kind of clarified that he's not going to accept any campaign funds from the state Republican Party after suggesting a few weeks ago that he would welcome their support. We also heard Protasiewicz suggest possible changes to settled case law about a lot of Republican victories, they like to call them. Act 10, taking away absentee ballot drop boxes, limiting the governor's powers, emergency powers. So she kind of signaled if elected, we could see those issues come back before the court. Both candidates agreed on one thing and one thing only, is that they did signal support for the bail amendment that will be on the April 4th ballot. There'll be a question on there asking whether you believe judges should have more discretion when setting bail amounts. And Republicans kind of really authored this whole effort and spearheaded this in wake of the Darrell Brooks incident in Waukesha. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to session this week. We previewed this last week about bipartisan bills dealing with reckless driving. Well, both of them passed in both chambers, and now they'll be heading to Governor Tony Evers' desk. Now, what they would do, they would impose stiffer penalties on those caught reckless driving. It would go from a $200 fine to $400. And if you are a repeat offender, and the police would be able to impound your vehicle so you couldn't get it back if you're not paying those previous fines. So with this very well might be the first bills that we see Governor Tony Evers signs after he signaled support for them.
Significant bills, yes. And they actually can get stuffed on the Capitol once in a while. It actually does happen, despite the split control of the governor's office of the legislature. So interesting that big bipartisan votes. Some Democrats will complain of you're addressing a penalty, not the root cause of what's going on, but people in Milwaukee are tired of what they're seeing. So I don't see any real hesitancy from the governor about this anyway, but he said he's going to sign it. Something to watch for, though, on the crime front, with the amendments you talked about, there's a trailer bill to the amendments that define certain terms to help judges with the discretion they would have in setting bail. That was a partisan vote. I'm watching, does Governor Evers sign that bill when it's to his desk? Because if he doesn't, when the author says of the amendment, it's a wild, wild west out there for judges. This is partly Republicans' fault. They could have addressed this in the amendment process and kind of did it then. They wanted it on the ballot this spring along with a advisory referendum about people working qualify for benefits. Now they have to worry, is the governor going to sign it? If he doesn't, does he work with them on a compromise? And if they can't reach that, then what happens?
Now let's get into the Republican criticism that has been talked about a lot this week in the Capitol about Governor Evers' appointment of Sarah Godlewski to fulfill Doug LaFollette's resignation from the Secretary of State's office. So this occurred, and Republicans are kind of questioning, the timing of this. Doug LaFollette only served about 3 months of his 12th term. He's been in this office for a very long time. He said in his resignation letter that, well, I just don't want to keep doing this with lack of resources. That office has been stripped of many duties over the years. They only operate with about a $260,000 budget each year. So that's also something Republicans are raising questions about, since you're just coming off the heels of a very close race that he had with his Republican challenger, Representative Amy Loudenbeck. That was a race that was only decided by about a little bit more than 7,000 votes. So Republicans passed a resolution this week saying, hey, we're calling on Governor Tony Evers to hold a special election. It has no real authority to make him do anything. It's more of a political statement to add to their argument. Governor Evers doesn't have any really reason why he would hold one. He has the options of appointing and holding a special election, and he has no interest in this and has dismissed Republicans' criticism.
And, Republicans are smart, people tell me, to make an issue about this now, because Godlewski now has a platform to run again for something in 2026. Now, back up on LaFollette. If you know Doug LaFollette quite well, he's not known as a master political maneuver, right, or mastermind. So people doubt that sometime this past spring he and Evers got in a room and Doug said, look, I'm going to resign after a few months. If I win again, then you can appoint somebody else to set him or her up for future run. It does beg the question, though, why now, Doug? Because you've known for years that your office lacked resources and staff. So put that aside. Godlewski has an opportunity, and I stress an opportunity, to have a platform for another run down the road. How she use it, though? Does she seem nakedly political? This is all about me, setting me up for 2026? Or does she find a way to say, hey, I'm using this office to do something good for Wisconsin and talk about issues that people in Wisconsin care about, which has a side benefit of me being positioned in 2026? Don't forget, Governor Evers in his 70s has pushed us off. We've asked about a third term. That down the road will make a decision. People generally think he's not going to run for a third term in 2026. Democratic Attorney General Josh Kaul, Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, they're obvious people you'd think about for a possible pool for candidates. Godlewski now fits in that conversation neatly. The question again is, how does she use his office? And oh, by the way, there is a question out there. Would she have been smarter to stay in the private sector? She has a PAC that she created after she dropped out of the Senate race to help other candidates. Could she have used that as a vehicle to keep her profile up there and done stuff in the private sector? But that's off the table now. It's about how does she use this office, again, not just for herself, but for Wisconsin, the side benefit of helping her maybe in 2026.
All right, well, that will do it for this week. Thanks for joining us.